Well, hello, everyone. Happy Monday. Welcome to Live at 5. Live at 5 is a stream I do pretty much, every day at 5, as it is aptly named. I stream live at 5 o'clock on my main channel on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. On Fridays, we go over to my second channel, Actively Unwoke, for happy hour. And on Saturdays, I rest. And then we get up and we do it all over again. Sadly, I am not streaming on Facebook today because Facebook gave me a 24-hour ban and a 30-day suspension from live streaming because Facebook thinks the Quaker Oats man is terrorist. I kid you not. If any of you caught my effed up news stream yesterday, I talked about how I got censored on Instagram for posting the Quaker Oats guy and calling it white supremacy because the Quaker Oats guy the Quaker Oats guy outlasted the Indian on Land O'Lakes butter. He outlasted Aunt Jemima. He outlasted Uncle Ben. And apparently both Facebook and Instagram think that this is like highly, highly, highly white supremacist to point this out. And so I have a 24-hour ban on Facebook from posting a meme and a 30-day live streaming ban. I kid you not. All the evidence is on my Twitter if you want to see. But that's okay because we are streaming on YouTube, we are streaming on Odyssey, we are streaming on Rockfin, and we are streaming on Rumble. I've got backups up the wazoo. F Facebook. Why does Facebook hate Quakers? Quakers are peaceful folk. I don't know why Facebook thinks that Quakers are terrorists. But today on the show, we have one thing to do on today's show, and I'm going to show you what it is. We're going to read this article. Now, this article I saw was shared by a lot of people that I respect. It was shared by Local Distance. It was shared by Benjamin Boyce. It was even shared by Mr. Jordan Peterson himself, or Dr. Jordan Peterson, I should say. And the reason we have one thing to do today is that this is a long-ass article. It's a long-ass article. This is going to take us a minute. But I really want us to all read and process this article together, because I have been arguing for a while that I do not believe that we are going to defeat the woke menace in our lifetimes. I don't think it's possible. They have a 40-plus year head start on us. They have been fighting this battle of inches to take over every major institution. And the thing of it is, people think because we're getting some victories in terms of anti-CRT laws or possibly now educational transparency laws, they think that's all it's going to take. They think that the fact that the Republicans are probably going to win back the House and maybe the Senate, but maybe not too, they think that that's an indication that people are sick of wokeness. No. This is a problem that is much bigger than that. And I think that this article is going to illuminate that for some folks who think that this is just a short battle. This is a marathon. It is not a sprint. And yeah, Reagan just said in the chat, don't be fooled by easy fixes. That is exactly right. Oh, Matthew. Hey, Matthew. It's good to see you. Matthew and I met at the James Lindsay event in Tampa, Florida. Good to see you in the chat, my friend. But yeah, so we're going to read this entire article today, or I'm going to read it. And I'm looking at you guys in the chat. I want to all process this together, because the people who watch my channel, watch my content, you guys are on the front lines of this. You understand it. And I want to work together kind of with me on the video reading the thing, but I'm going to be paying very close attention to the chat, mostly on YouTube, but I'll check in occasionally on all the other platforms I'm streaming on just to see what's going on over there. And I want us to process all together what is in this article, what are the most pertinent details that we need to take away from it in order to build ourselves up, get ourselves ready for the battle that we are in right now. Thank you to Peter for the super chat. Trudeau has invoked the Emergencies Act. Canada has fallen. See, I need to look into what this Emergencies Act actually is. I don't understand what that means. So if there's any resource that you have, Peter, that you could point us to a good primer on what this actually means that Trudeau has introduced this, and please don't say a Tim Pool video. Like, I want an actual resource. I'm sorry. I need a document. I need like a bill or something that I can read. I need a primary source. I don't want Tim Pool's interpretation on this. Not that he's fine, but like, I just don't want his Civil Wars everywhere interpretation on this. So I need to look into what that means. But if you didn't catch the stream that I did last night, and I posted a clip of it today, apparently, like, in order to use the military, Trudeau has to get permission from the Queen, which I just think is like a fascinating, a fascinating component of this whole thing. And I don't know how that overlaps with the Emergencies Act, but everyone in the Canadian military, because the Queen is not just the Queen of England, she is also the Queen of Canada and many other countries as well. Don't believe me? Google right now. Google who is the Queen of Canada. Queen Elizabeth's going to pop right up. And everyone who joins the Canadian military has to swear allegiance to the Queen, which means if Trudeau's using the military, he has to get permission from the Queen. It's just a whole it's a whole little fascinating sidetrack of this. But Peter, I see you in the chat. An update to the War Powers Act. I'm going to need to look into this some more. But thank you for being a member on the channel, and thank you for bringing that to my attention. Thank you, Cone. I don't know how to pronounce your name, but thank you for the $5 super chat. I appreciate that. And I think I saw another super chat coming in too from Naruto. DC. Yes, I heard this too. DC has announced an end to the vaccine mandates. Huh. Isn't it funny? Isn't it funny that the end of vaccine mandates seems to dramatically coincide with incredibly low polling numbers supporting continued vaccine mandates? It's just funny how that all works. But you know what? I'm going to say about this, though. I want you guys to really notice something about the ending of the mandates. It all happened when the left wanted it to. Nothing that any of us did to push back on the mandates or the passports or the restrictions or any of the things resulted in the ending of the mandates. The ending of the mandates, whether it be to go to a restaurant in DC or whether to send your child to school without a mask, all of these things coincided with when the political left wanted them to end. And that is just more evidence that this woke nonsense is far from over because they control every major institution. We can whine, we can stomp our feet, we can quit our jobs, we can send a massive trucker convoy to DC. Like, who knows if that's even going to happen now? Apparently, they're planning a trucker convoy, and now DC's ending the mandate. So who knows what's going to happen to that trucker convoy or what they're actually going to accomplish? I hope anyone working with that trucker convoy has got an idea of like a new goal. Maybe redirect it to a new city. What if you guys went to New York? I'm just saying. But I think that we all need to be hyper aware that we're on the political left's timeline right now. We're on the woke left's timeline. They have all the control. They have all the power. We don't have any of it. And that's exactly why we need to read articles like this, because just because you win back maybe the House of Representatives in the 2022 midterms, that doesn't mean anything. And people really need to start confronting that fact. It doesn't mean anything. But we'll talk about that as the stream goes on today. Let me see. All right. But before we get into that, so guys, I am really like, this is my full-time job right now. And you know, I've got this little horde of idiots on Twitter that like to make fun of me. They're like, Carlin just wants to fight the woke because she wants all the money and power. Well, the fact of the matter is that I've dedicated a lot of time to this and I'm really effing good at it. I would be happy to go back to my old job. If anyone else wants to step up and take my place, more than happy to. But one of the things I did to help fight back against the woke is I wrote this here book. It's coming out in April. It is the only book that exists on the market that is highly practical, highly actionable, provides case studies, provides things that every single person can do to fight back against the woke in their real lives. Like, make no mistake, guys, what I'm working on right now with Actively Unwoke and all of the things I'm working on in my locals community or separately from YouTube is I'm trying to create more people like me to stand up, to use your voices, to fight back, to do all the things that are required to beat back this woke revolution. Because the more people that are out there speaking up and fighting back, hey man, I am more than happy, haters, to go back to my other life. I really, really am. And so part of the reason I wrote Actively Unwoke was to give the tools to everyone to be able to fight back against the woke menace in their lives. It is available for pre-order right now. You can head over to activelyunwoke.com to pick up your copy. Other things you can do on Actively Unwoke is to attend webinars and free trainings that I'm giving or hosting in some cases, because I'm not even giving all of them. I'm bringing in other experts, other grassroots activists to be able to teach us how we can speak up and what is going on and give us real world strategies. So I have this webinar coming up on February 17th. It's called Die Hard, Critical Race Theory Teacher Training Exposed. It's going to be given by my friend Paul Rossi. Paul just wrote this op-ed in the Wall Street Journal along with Andrew Gutman. Inside the woke indoctrination machine, after watching 100 hours of leaked videos, we now fully grasp the danger of this ideology in schools. In this free webinar on Thursday, I believe, Paul is going to be showing us the videos that they unlocked, that they've been investigating. And these videos are so scary that Twitter is already censoring them. And so this is a free event that you can sign up for. It's going to be Thursday at noon. And if you can't make it at that time slot, I still encourage you to sign up anyway, because you're going to get an email of the webinar recording afterwards, and it will be living on the site afterwards as well. I also have this webinar that I did last week with Nicole Solis. Now, I want to show you how the recordings work of these. Just go in, click on this promo, because I haven't switched it over yet. It's going to take you to a screen. You click on that play button, you put in your name and email address, you're going to get access to that recording. So that's how the recordings work. They're going to live on Actively Unwoke after the webinars are done. We also have book club coming up this weekend for my local supporters with Aaron Kinsvatter. So we're going to talk more about how you become a local supporter to get access to this book club, but it's an excellent book. It's all about how totalitarian regimes brainwash people. It is highly relevant to what is going on. I strongly recommend everyone read this book. And you know, if you're so inclined, you still have time to read the book, come to our book club that we're doing on Sunday with Aaron Kinsvatter, who's a psychologist and a counselor and an unwoke whistleblower himself. He is going to have a great conversation with us about the R of the mind and what that means for the time that we're in. And then on the 24th, I am doing another introductory presentation to critical race theory, which you can share out to all of your friends and family who need to learn about this ideology. All of the red events on Actively Unwoke, they're completely free. You don't have to pay anything to join. You just have to like sign up and log into a webinar software and chat with a bunch of people who are like-minded. That's all you have to do. They're completely free to you. I'm not doing these for my health. I'm doing them because I want people to understand this ideology, and the only way we get more people to understand it is by teaching it and making that content available. So all of that is available on activelyunwoke.com right now. And if you want to get access to that book club and lots of other exclusive features, you can become a member of my Locals community. Locals is the best place on the internet, is the only troll-free zone on the internet. I have the very best community on Locals. My local supporters get exclusive perks, not only for book club, but today, in less than 2 hours, we are having an open community Zoom call where if you are a supporter in my Locals community at 7 o'clock, you're going to be able to log on to a Zoom and chat with other supporters in my community. And really, I don't do a whole lot of chatting in these calls, guys. I kind of sit back and I relax and I listen to everyone else. But you also obviously do have the chance to interact with me, to ask me questions, stuff like that. These calls are generally the very best part of my week. My community helps each other. They support each other. We keep each other in good spirit. And you can join and find out what that's like at 7 p.m. tonight when you sign up for the community. To sign up, you head over to kb.locals.com/support. It is $5 a month. It is $50 a year, which gives you 2 months for free. Or you can make a one-time gift. All of those things work. And when you sign up, you might as well just do it today while you're like, you know, watching the stream anyway. Why not? Come to our community Zoom in a couple hours. Hey man, you sign up for $5 a month, and then you come to our community Zoom in a couple hours. If you hate it, you can just cancel. It's only $5. It's like less than you pay for a cup of coffee at Starbucks. But what I think is going to happen is when you come to our community Zoom, you're going to meet some of the best people in the world. You're going to have a great experience, and you're just going to want to keep coming back and back and back. My community Zooms are just growing bigger and bigger and bigger. We're going to have to figure out a solution for that at some point. But I'm looking forward to seeing everyone in just a couple of hours. All right. We're going to dig into our article, but I did see another super chat come by from my friend Emphasize. That's a strike using AV. Gonna take a minute. I got a strike for pointing it out too. My social credit score just went down for being SMRT. I mean SMRT. Thank you, Emphasize, for the super chat and for the support. Let me just check in on my other platforms, making sure things are working like they should be. We got Odyssey up and running. We've got Rockfin up and running, and we even have Rumble up and running. I finally bit the bullet. I'm streaming on Rumble now just to make some of you happy. Hello to Rumble. We're going to see how this works out. Okay. Let's dig in and we're going to start reading this here long ass article. Make it real big so everyone can see. Let's see. Okay. No, the woke revolution isn't over. None of the fundamental drivers of wokeness have relented. And guys, just to remind you, I am going to be keeping an eye on the chat as I'm reading this. And I really, guys, I really want your input on this. Consider this a group project. I may be the only one on the video, but we're all in this together. We're all going to brainstorm this together. So please make sure you're chatting in comments as we're going. Oh, and make sure you hit that like button if you haven't already. That really helps me out. Please and thank you. At least in the Boss Wash, the corridor of the East Coast establishment power running from Boston to Washington, I've never heard it called that in my life, but okay. Using January to make public predictions about the year ahead is an ironclad tradition. Usually these predictions end up being completely wrong because no one here has any idea what they're talking about. I hope that holds true in my case because I want to use my mandatory annual forecast to dump a few gallons of cold, contrarian water on what seems to have recently become a fashionable prediction that the woke ideological revolution roiling the West has peaked and will soon be in full retreat. Consider a handful of examples of this new genre. So then he lists a whole bunch of articles that we're not going to go through one by one. While a few of these examples are from earlier in 2021, this theme seems to have really emerged and begun to solidify into a consensus among more centrist types soon after the beginning of November 2021. I'm going to go ahead and say that all of the people who are writing these articles are commentators with absolutely zero real world experience. That's what I'm betting. Commentators with absolutely zero real world experience, or maybe it's just wishful thinking. Because I'm sorry, anyone that's actually on the front lines of this understands fully that just because you have a couple of wins doesn't mean we've turned back anything. That was when some conservative American politicians won or almost won a few special elections, in part by riding a popular backlash to the critical race theory in schools, and a number of local ballot measures to defund police departments failed around the country. Republicans, feeling especially good about their chances against a flailing Biden, started drooling over a red wave expected to sweep them back into power in the 2022 midterm elections. And now that private equity executive turned Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin has personally won the culture wars battle of Midway, the tide has turned, and aside from the occasional messy beachhead here and there, inevitable victory is now in sight or something. Glenn Youngkin proved this article. I don't even need to read the rest of the article yet to say this. Glenn Youngkin's executive order banning critical race theory on day one is proof positive that this article is correct, because Glenn Youngkin's day one executive order, as we all know on this channel, did not actually ban critical race theory. So I think that Republicans, and I mean no offense to any Republicans watching, I do not know you personally. I'm not making a personal comment on you. I think Republicans as a collective are very naive. I think they're extremely naive. I think they view one victory as the end all be all of everything. I mean, we saw this with Trump, didn't we? They thought that Trump was going to fix everything. Trump was the grand protector of everything. No way he was going to lose in 2020. And we can talk about whether or not his loss was legitimate or not. That's a different conversation. But I think Republicans viewed that situation extremely naively. And I think they're viewing the Glenn Youngkin situation in Virginia equally naively. And I also think they're going to view the midterms, which I do believe will be a red wave, but quite frankly, not as a result of anything the Republicans have done. They haven't presented any vision. I don't even know what Republicans stand for. The only reason Republicans are going to win in 2022 is because the Democrats really suck. It is not a vote in favor of Republicans. It is a vote against Democrats. And those are two different things. Two absolutely different things. So if people think that the battle of wokeness is over just because Glenn Youngkin won the governor of Virginia, That is an incredibly naive, short sighted view that does not take into full consideration what the battle against the woke actually is, which is a cultural revolution. It's a cultural revolution that started a long, long, long time ago that has worked its way into controlling every major institution in our country. One single election is going to do nothing, absolutely nothing to solve this problem. The best it is throwing sand in their gears, as James Lindsay likes to say, or slowing them down a little bit. Anyway, let's keep going. One would think that by now, all these anti woke conservatives and moderate liberals would have learned at least some of the bitter lessons from the last decade about how political power and cultural change actually work, but I guess not. Oh my God, I couldn't agree with that sentence more. They could have taken note of all the fundamental factors driving this ideological belief system, all of which had to be painstakingly uncovered, layer by layer, even as it swept through every institution. But they have not. Like, do they even read the pages and pages of erudite Substack anthropology on the topic? No. They could have recognized by now that this is not a simple political issue with a political solution, but they have not. Oh my God. Can we give a slow clap for that paragraph alone? That paragraph is completely correct. 100% correct. And this goes into the naivete of conservatives and Republicans, and maybe even the wishful thinking of centrists and even like lefties and liberals that don't like the woke shit. And they're thinking, oh, well, it's just, if the mandates go away, that's the end of wokeness. Or if someone gets elected, that's the end of it. Everything's fixed. Yay. It's naive. It's naive. This battle against the woke did not come through politics. As Andrew Breitbart would say, politics is downstream of culture. What the woke have done that is so incredibly intelligent of them, and I'm not saying I endorse this from a me perspective because I hate that they did this. They changed the culture. They focused on the culture. Now, if there's anything I've learned about the political right in the last 2 years, and by the way, guys, yesterday was actually the 2-year anniversary of my original Trump rally article going viral on the internet. I got all these Facebook memories of like when Trump Jr. and Glenn Beck retweeted me and stuff like that. So I've had 2 years in the public eye now. And one of the things I know for sure is that Republicans and conservatives have not yet grasped that the battle is not political. The battle is cultural. And they always try to focus their energy on the next election, the next election, the next election, when they do not focus any energy at all on trying to change the culture that leads to the election result that they're so focused on. And because they don't focus on changing the culture, they leave everything on the table. They might win a temporary victory, but they will lose the long term battle. If you are focusing on the next election, that is a short term battle. If you are focusing on the culture, that is a long term battle. The woke left knew this. And that's why decades ago, they started focusing on the culture over the elections. And that's why it will take another several decades to fix the problem. Look, honestly, I really didn't have to do this. Come the new year, I had resolved to focus on the positives and all that crap. But I haven't seen anyone else do it, so I guess I have no choice. The duty falls on me to deliver the pessimistic news. No, the revolution is far from over. So, in what might serve. Oh, God, you guys now have one of my email addresses, dude. Well, my screen's not letting me delete this, so that's nice. Whatever. It's a public email address anyway, it doesn't really matter. So in what might also serve as a handy tour guide to the vast depths of the ideological abyss, cataloged at length here is a convenient listicle format. There are 20 reasons to get woke and despair. Hang on. Well, I can't see it now. Okay. Number one, one does not simply walk away from a religious belief. What is called wokeness, or the successor ideology, or the new faith, or what have you, note the foe, hasn't even been successfully named yet, let alone routed, rests on a series of what are ultimately metaphysical beliefs. The fact that their holders would laugh at the suggestion that have anything called metaphysical beliefs is irrelevant, they hold them nonetheless, such as the world is divided into dualistic struggle between oppressed and oppressors, good and evil. Language fundamentally defines reality. Therefore, language, and more broadly, the word, thought, logic, logos, is raw power and is used by oppressors to control the oppressed. Oh my God, this guy is fucking awesome. So yeah, I mean, even we're going to keep reading this paragraph, but I just want to point out this is something that I really kind of emphasized quite a bit. The woke use language as their greatest weapon. And that is one of the reasons why we never, ever, 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 ever accept the definition that the woke left give us. You never accept the definition of a leftist. This is a mistake I see conservatives making all the time. They cede the ground. They say, well, Carlin, the woke left says that if we're white, we're racist. And so we might as well just go along with it. And I'm like, no, why are you accepting their definition? That's stupid. It is, it is downright stupid to say that if someone is born with white skin, they are racist. That's stupid. So when a leftist says, if you're white, you're racist, and you go, well, if they're going to call me racist anyway, then we might as well just go along with it. That is like the dumbest idea ever. What you do is you say, no, that is not the correct definition, and you move on. Charlie Kirk doesn't focus on culture. Charlie Kirk is a moron. I'm sorry. Charlie Kirk is focusing. Here's what Charlie Kirk is doing. Let's just be really clear. Charlie Kirk is trying to legislate his religious beliefs. Don't bring this shit into my chat, Lisa. I will call you out on this. Absolutely. I like you. You're around a lot and I appreciate it. But do not pretend that Charlie Kirk is trying to focus on culture. Charlie Kirk is trying to legislate his religious beliefs. Charlie Kirk said yesterday, and this pisses me off because I'm a First Amendment absolutist and this should be in the fight for free speech. Charlie Kirk said that a Satan conference is not protected by the First Amendment. That is absolutely incorrect. Charlie Kirk yesterday said that the Super Bowl halftime show should be censored because it is sexual anarchy. Charlie Kirk is trying to legislate his religious beliefs. That's not focusing on culture. Sorry. All right. I've got it out of my system. Got it out of my. That guy's a moron. I'm sorry. Charlie Kirk, for anyone on the right, any conservative that's watching, Charlie Kirk right now is making you guys all look like the moral majority from the 1990s, the thing that turned people like me off to Republicans entirely. That's who Charlie Kirk is right now. He's the moral majority from the 1990s. Anywho, back to this. This has created power hierarchies enforced by the creation of false boundaries and authorities. No oppression existed in the mythic past, the utopian, pre hierarchical state of nature in which we are all free and equal. The strain of injustice only entered the world through the original sin of Western civilization hierarchy. All disparities visible today are de facto proof of the influence of hierarchical oppression or discrimination. To redeem the world from sin, i.e., to end oppression and achieve social justice, to return to the kingdom of heaven, all false authorities and boundaries must be torn down or deconstructed. Oh, this guy's such a good writer. And power redistributed from the oppressors to the oppressed. All injustice anywhere is interlinked or intersectionality. So the battle against injustice is necessarily total. I just want to pause right here. I want to say something about I have more to say about the Charlie Kirk thing. Sorry. I'm like thinking about this article and also thinking about the Charlie Kirk thing in my head, so I need to excise the Charlie Kirk thing. The reason that this pisses me off that he does shit like this, and frankly this goes for many conservative blue check influencers, is every single time Charlie Kirk tweets something stupid, like someone practicing their religion that's not Christianity is against the First Amendment, like please, he makes this battle harder. Charlie Kirk makes the fight against the woke harder to win. Matt Walsh makes the fight against the woke harder to win. They are not on our team. They are not on our side. If Charlie Kirk and Matt Walsh and people like them were in charge, they are just as authoritarian as the woke left are. They make it harder, they don't make it easier, they don't help. They're like 5-year-old kids in the kitchen claiming to help mom cook when in fact they're just making a mess that mom has to clean up later. That's who Charlie Kirk is. He's the child in the kitchen that says, "Look, I'm helping to make dinner, but making a big old mess and not doing anything productive." Now, you can excuse that for a 5-year-old. You can't excuse it for someone with 1.7 million Twitter followers. Savrits, I'll destroy them intellectually, every single one. Lisa, this isn't against you. I'm just like, I really hate these people. I genuinely do. I genuinely do, because they make it harder for the rest of us. Anyone who is making this fight harder, as though it's not hard enough already, anyone who is making this fight harder is not on the flipping team. They're basically no different than the woke left. That's all. That has nothing to do with you personally, Lisa. That's to do with my issue with them. All right. Ultimate victory is cosmically ordained. Guys, if you have any questions about my rant about Charlie Kirk, you can send them in a super chat. I'm not getting into further discussion on this unless I'm getting paid for it. Sorry. We need to focus. Ultimate victory is cosmically ordained by history. Through the arc of progress may be long. Moral virtue and true right to rule is determined by collective status within the oppressed dialect. Morally neutral political liberalism is a lie construed by the powerful to maintain the status quo structures of oppression. The first step to liberation can be achieved through the acquisition of hidden knowledge of the truth of this dialect. A select woken vanguard must therefore guide a revolution in popular consciousness. All imposed limits on the individual can ultimately be transcended by virtue of willpower. No, we do have a team. We have a team of people that are actually working towards the goal, which is not what Charlie Kirk is doing. It's not what Matt Walsh is doing. There are people who are working towards this goal. Blue check conservative influencers, for the most part, are not. What blue check conservative influencers are doing is trying to maintain their status. I just don't know how else to explain this to you guys. They're trying to maintain their status. They're using all of you to make money. That's all they're doing. That's all they're interested in. So we do have a team, but they're not supported by the people that you all lift up and make the loudest voices on your side. Okay, fine. Let's get into this fight then. See, this is the problem, guys. This is the problem. I'm going to be real blunt. We've got a full article to read here about what the woke are doing and how to fight back. You guys want to talk about Charlie Kirk. I'm going based on what's in the chat right now. Tim Kelly says, no offense, Carlin, but how our society has been doing ever since those religious and morals from the past stopped being practiced by a large majority. We have a First Amendment in this country. If you do not support the First Amendment in this country, get the fuck off my channel. That's what I have to say. But that is the non-super chat answer, Tim. If you don't support the First Amendment, get the fuck off my channel. If you do not support people's ability to believe whatever they want to believe, practice whatever they want to practice, worship in any way that they see fit. If you want to impose your religious values on other people through any legislation at all that is based on your religious values, and yes, that includes legislation related to the restricting of abortion, then you are not on the team. You are an authoritarian. You should be nowhere in any position of power at all. Woke on the right exists just like woke on the left does. And I would like to focus on woke on the left, but you guys in the chat are focusing on your own wokeness. So that's why you're getting a stern talking to right now. I'm sorry. If you want to fight back against this for real, then we're going to focus on the article. If you don't want to fight back about this for real, then you don't belong here. Go listen to Charlie Kirk's podcast, man. I'm sure he's got something going that's perfect for you. Oh, it's so frustrating. And let me tell you why I'm pissed off about this, because it's like every single time. I don't know what it is about Charlie Kirk and Mac fucking Walsh and all of these blue check influencers. Like, conservatives feel the need to protect these people. These people are only grifting on you to make money. That's all they're doing. This is their only way to maintain relevance because they're deeply stupid people otherwise. Matthew Varden says, I'm a conservative and I found nothing about the Super Bowl performance overly sexual. It wasn't my kind of music, but who cares if it was sexual? Charlie Kirk focuses on things that don't matter. That is exactly the problem. Part of the reason that we are in this entire situation right now is that the people who have the loudest voices on the political right are constantly focused on bullshit that does not matter. Constantly. And you know what? They're free to do that. Charlie Kirk is welcome to tweet authoritarian tweets about how he wants to mandate his religious values on everyone else. He is welcome to do that. But why the political right continues to lift these people up as their loudest voices, continues to support these people, continues to say, these are the standard bearers of our political movement. It boggles my mind. It boggles my mind. It is so incredibly frustrating. It is so incredibly frustrating to me why the political right will give $100,000 to Matt Walsh playing a prank on goddamn AOC, but they won't do anything, nothing, to help Gabrielle Clark in her case. Mind-boggling to me. Mind-boggling. And this is not their fault. They're simply taking advantage of what the political right is doing. Mind-boggling to me. All right. We're going back to the article now. If you have something related to Charlie Kirk or Matt Walsh or any of the other blue check conservative influencers, you can send me in a super chat. I will respond to it if I am paid to respond to it. But otherwise, we're going to focus on this article because that's what we're here to do. Tim is still complaining in the chat. You just exposed more about yourself than you did about me. I'm not religious. Tim, you're now getting a block. Goodbye. This is how we handle people who whine on this channel. I am had it. This is part of the fucking problem right here. I didn't intend to do a rant today, but you know what? This is part of the problem. Is people constantly whining and complaining about every single thing when we could actually be focusing on understanding the problem, and instead you're whining in my chat because you don't like my words on the internet. Tim, you're getting put in a timeout. You can stay or not, but there will be no more whining. There will be no more whining. You want to whine in my chat because you think I have a tone? Oh my God, Carlin has a tone. You want to whine in my chat about my tone? You're going to get put into timeout. You can go work out your feelings and not disrupt the rest of us. Metastep Charlie is projecting his sexual frustration. I mean, that's probably true. But wow. Some of you in the chat really don't get it. You really don't. You really don't. That's cool, man. Use this as all entertainment. I don't really give a fuck. I could go on, but the real point here is that faith-based beliefs and one's capable of wielding an iron grip on the individual and collective mind, and they have a strong civilizational resonance because they are in fact not arbitrary, but deeply rooted in a metaphysical struggle. We've already read this. Number 2, the void of meaning still hasn't been filled. I mean, did the gaping hole of meaning in people's lives created by the uprooting forces of secular liquid modernity get resolved in some alternative way that we weren't looking while we weren't looking? You know, the spiritual void that has this creepy faith ideology and its romantic political crusades rushed to fill in the first place. Has there been some kind of genuine organized religious revival? Has decadent nihilism stopped being the defining sentiment of the age? Did the young ever become hyper nationalist or revolutionary Marxist class warriors instead? Have they found an alternative passion, heroic narrative to act out in some new Davos slide deck? No. And in fact, meanwhile, it also seems that social atomization hasn't been reversed. All right, we can talk about this. Yeah, Gypsy Witch Productions. It always appears morals and values are strictly Christian. Even atheists can have morals. The First Amendment is for everyone. I am sure that there will be people, some in the chat right now, who will say that, well, Carlin, that paragraph is just proof. It is just proof that we need to follow Charlie Kirk's religious ideology and force Christianity on the masses through legislation. That's not what it is at all. That's not what it is at all. It's about people finding a larger meaning in their lives, and that can come in a variety of different forms. That does not mean necessarily Christianity. It does not necessarily mean Judaism. It does not necessarily mean Buddhism. It does not necessarily mean Hinduism or any other religious belief on the planet. It doesn't mean a generalized spirituality like I practice. Oh, hang on, let me find it. There we go. Gypsy Witch Productions is exactly right that atheists can have morals too. So this is one of the things that we need to grapple with is that people have lost meaning in their lives. I firmly believe that one of the reasons I didn't go woke is because right after the 2016 election when Trump was elected, I went to Peru for 10 days and did ayahuasca and San Pedro ceremonies and got in touch with my spirituality. I fully believe that's why I didn't go woke, is because I had a spiritual practice that I still follow through to this day that helped me to see a deeper meaning in everything, even if it wasn't turning out the way that I wanted it to. And that meaning has been lost. That meaning has been lost. I don't care if you're a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim or a Buddhist or a Hindu or a spiritualist or whatever you practice. But people need to start finding deeper meaning in their lives. Now, I have certain ideas about how the best way to do that is. You may have other ideas, but forcing like here's the thing. People like Charlie Kirk don't understand this. Religion can't be forced on people. Meaning can't be forced on people. You have to want it. You have to seek it. You have to pursue it. So many people have found their meaning, found their purpose, found their life's value in being a social justice warrior, in raising their fist and saying Black Lives Matter. You cannot force people to believe something that they do not seek out for themselves and that they are not open to. I don't care how much legislation you pass. I don't care if the Supreme Court rules that the Satan Conference is not against the First Amendment or is against the First Amendment. It doesn't matter. People will always excuse me. People will never find meaning in their lives if they are not first open to receiving that meaning. You can't force anything on anyone. Byron said, "Thank you for your stream talking to the woke right winger. They need it just as much as the woke left." Dude, it's so true. It's so true. Let's see. Emphasize says, by the rule of double negatives not being grammatically correct, wanting to delete me for believing that deleting babies is wrong makes a valid point. Emphasize, I'm not quite sure what you're trying to say there, and I appreciate the super chat, my friend. But it seems off topic if I'm honest. It seems off topic. Lisa, I think you're purposefully not understanding the point. I think it's a deliberate not understanding of the point. So if you don't want to understand the point, I can't force you to understand the point. If you are deliberately twisting words to mean things they don't mean, I can't force you to do it otherwise. But we're no longer going to be distracted by this in the chat. This is the last warning, and I'm not fucking around. All right. Social atomization hasn't been like, listen, I'm actually trying to accomplish something here, guys. I'm actually we're gonna have a serious talk. I'm actually trying to accomplish something here. I work 8 to 10 hours a day, every single day, on actually trying to fight back against this stuff. If you're just using this for entertainment, or you get off on being contrarian and disrupting every single person here that's actually trying to be a part of this, then you don't have a place here. I am not like every other content creator. I am not trying to appeal to everyone. I do not want to appeal to everyone. I only want to appeal to people who are actually serious about fighting back. Everything else is a distraction. Everything else. If you aren't here for real, if you're just here because it's entertaining for you and you get a kick out of it, then we need to part ways and you can go watch Tim Pool or anyone else that is trying to appeal to a mass audience. I am not the person for you. Not the person at all. Savrit says, all races have the true light, consciousness of the spirit and the divine heavens, sun, moon, and stars equals false light of the atheistic heavens and the physical realm of matter, the spiritually blind. Thank you, Savrits, for the super chat. Emphasize, I win merely by the rule of virtue, a martyr. Emphasize again, I don't know what that means, but thank you for the money. See? And this is the problem, guys. Deborah, I think I will have to read this article for myself because the noise of those who are being contrary is too distracting to my ADD brain. We're just going to sit with that for a second. Our goal here was to read this article. I'm reading this article on the live stream for benefit for everyone so that we can have a discussion about the article. Lisa, if you do not want to have a discussion about the article, okay, let me be very clear about this. Lisa, the next time you chat in anything that does not have to do with this article or your thoughts about the article, I'm going to ban you from my channel. Last warning. Not a temporary block. I will ban you from ever commenting or chatting on my channel again the next time you chat anything in that has nothing to do with this article because you're distracting everyone else in the chat right now. Tim Kelly is getting blocked because Tim Kelly continues to chat in things that have nothing to do with this article. Are we all clear? I'm not fucking around anymore. No more distractions. Sorry, not sorry. There are plenty of other places you guys can go and chat if you just want to fuck around. Social atomization hasn't reversed. It sure seems like the kind of robust communities, civic associations, and little platoons which once served to fortify society against the revolutionary, perverse, and totalitarian I don't know how to pronounce his name, that forces that thrive on atomization haven't suddenly been rebuilt from the ground up. In fact, even the most basic such unit, family formation, appears to continue to decline precipitously, and that may be because I just don't like. Lisa just got put in a timeout, just so you guys know. If Lisa comes back from the timeout and continues to distract people, she's going to get blocked. Atomization is probably the inevitable byproduct of liberal modernity. That is, liberalization made the autonomy of the individual for its highest good. Yeah. The autonomy of the individual, its highest good. To maximize individual autonomy, the state therefore found itself obliged, being unable to resist the claims that it must enforce an expanding array of rights, to exercise its power to help progressively liberate the individual from all limits and constraints, including from tradition, religion, geography, community, family, and nature itself. I'm not sure if I'm agreeing with this paragraph. I'm trying to figure out if I agree with this. That's why I'm being a little bit slow about it. I'm trying to process if I agree with this paragraph in real time. This is certainly deserving of more argument than I have space to recap here. See 4 big questions for the counter-revolution for a bit more. Liberalism has thus acted as a centrifuge force, severing all the centripetal counterforces that once kept individuals connected to recognizably human communities and launching them outwardly towards solitary orbits where they can drift cold and alone in their pods. I don't agree with this paragraph. Yeah, I don't agree with this paragraph, I don't think. And Sin, thank you for confirming this for me. Sin says, I don't agree with the paragraph. It is saying the individual liberties hurt the family. I don't think so. Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. Individual liberties is all that should matter. This is like fundamental, right? What the woke want is a collectivized society. The only way to balance that out is to focus on the individual. So I disagree with this. Like, we are all more free if we do take individualism to the extreme. Yeah, Deborah, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. It seems as though he is positing that individualism was due to liberalism. I mean, and I think that represents a fundamental misunderstanding of what it means to be a liberal. And this is part of the problem is again, our language has been bastardized. Liberal means liberty. A true liberal believes in individual liberty. So if you're taking the definition of the word liberal, and there are people guilty on the left doing this, and there are people guilty on the right doing this, if you're taking the word liberal and you're bastardizing that definition, either by saying the word liberal when you really mean progressive, or by saying the word liberal as an insult, which is what conservatives do all the flipping time, you're bastardizing the meaning of the word. So, no, I don't agree with him on this, but we're going to keep reading it anyway. From this perspective, it is more obvious why the amorphous ideology referred to as wokeness so often seems mixed up and chaotically self contradictory. It is the confused response to two opposite instincts. On one hand, it is actually a kind of anti liberal reactionary movement, a blind emotional scramble to grasp desperately for collectivism in the most basic tribal sort of community seemingly still available, in identity groups and in fixed racial identities in particular. But on the other, it is simultaneously attempts to continue embracing the boundless autonomy of the individual choice as its most sacred principle. Liberalism doesn't do this. That's not, that's, well, no, I mean, I apologize. I'm actually incorrect. I mean, it does actually embrace the boundless autonomy of individual choice, but that's a positive thing. That's a positive thing. That's something that we should be striving for. If people on the right want to argue for a different form of collectivism, that's not any fundamentally different than what the woke are already doing. This is part of what makes me so scared, to be honest, because I think that the woke left is the biggest problem we have to face in this country because they control every major institution. But the problem is that woke also exists on the right in the form of, I mean, we've had some of them in the chat today, people who are fundamentally authoritarian who call themselves conservative. Now, I am less concerned about woke on the right than I am woke on the left, simply because the right has no institutional power. The left has all the institutional power. So they're fundamentally more dangerous. But here's the thing that keeps me up at night. If our goal, if our goal is to get the woke left out of every major institution, out of power, who do we replace them with? Who do we put in their place instead? Because if we take the woke left out of power and we put a woke right authoritarian in that spot, we make no progress. Because an authoritarian is authoritarian. It doesn't matter if it's on the right, it doesn't matter if it's on the left. And so if we have people on the right, like this article seems to be asserting, that says individualism is a bad idea because it leads to more wokeness, which is just a fundamental misunderstanding of what wokeness even is to begin with. That's a problem. And that's a problem that we don't need to grapple with right this second. But it's kind of like, okay, let me make this analogy. Say you have a boss in an organization, and that boss is awful. That boss is terrible. That boss runs a unit that has low morale, low productivity. People are always pissed off at each other. They're disrupting the bottom line of the organization. Okay, you decide to fire that boss. Who do you replace that boss with? Do you replace it with someone else who's just as bad? Well, you're not going to actually fix the problem. You fixed the original problem, but then you perpetuated it because you replaced it with a bad person. That's what I think, that is a problem that we're going to come up with at some point. I don't know. We need to keep going, but that's something I've been thinking about quite a lot. Celebrating an individual's right to self-define everything about themselves without limit, up to and including their own concept of material reality. Well, why? As long as those individuals are not allowed to force their material reality on other people, That's the problem. Listen, the conservatives like to focus on the gender stuff a lot, and I think it's going to get conservatives in trouble if I'm really honest about it. But they say, like, you shouldn't just be able to reinvent science. There is a man and a woman. Well, what does it actually hurt you if someone says, I'm non binary and I want you to call me they, them? It doesn't hurt you at all. The problem is when you try to force your worldview onto other people. That's when the problems start. When you try to force other people to live by your worldview. Now, I have no problem with someone saying, I'm non binary or I'm trans and I want to use these pronouns and I want you to call me by this name. I fundamentally have no problem with that. The problem starts when you try to force me to either accept that there are 8,000 genders or that you try to legislate that if I don't use your pronouns, I'm going to get like fired or something. That's when the problem starts. Not that they can't live whatever the way they want to live, but that they're trying to force everyone else into their reality. Now, if they just wanted to live however they want to live off on their own and not force anyone else to do anything, that is a different story. I've had this conversation with Jeremy Kaufman, who's running for Senate in New Hampshire, and Jeremy said to me one time, he's like, Carlin, like, I don't actually have a problem with communists. I just want them to go off on their own and form their little communist society and not actually force their communism onto me. And I actually thought that was that. Lisa, you can send me in a super chat if you would like me to answer any future questions. And if you distract my chat now that your timeout is over, I'm going to block you next. That's what we're going to do here. Because things were peaceful, Lisa, when you were not chatting. And now they're about to get real again, and I'm not going to have it. But anyway, back to the story. So Jeremy said to me, he's like, I have no problem with communism as long as they're like, not forcing me to be communist. I actually think that that's pretty fair. Right? If you want to be a communist, fine, but just don't force it on other people. And I think that's what we should be striving for. It's like you can do whatever you want. Like it is not my business what someone calls themselves or what gender they present as or anything. Now, I do have a problem with teachers trying to force that on students, on children when they're not able to defend themselves. But adults should be able to do whatever the flip they want. As long as you're not hurting someone else or stealing someone else's stuff, it's none of our business. That's what we should be striving for. And I don't think this article has fundamentally grasped that on this paragraph, although I do agree with many other things that they've said so far. This, let me see, where did I leave off? I don't even know. Anyway, let's just move on. The information revolution is still reverberating. Ultimately, what's more important in driving societal change, ideas, individuals, material conditions, or technological forces? That's a fascinating question to debate. But for now, all that matters is that it's become manifestly clear that the ongoing revolution in information technology, most notably the internet and social media, has been a tremendous driver of cultural and political change. In fact, a growing number of thinkers tend to attribute nearly the entire phenomenon of wokeness to the technological factors. I don't agree with that. I frankly do not care what a number of thinkers say because thinkers basically have no real world experience. I do agree with Patrice. Patrice says in the chat the speed up of information is a huge deal. I also agree that I believe the point that social media pushes us into our echo chambers at a higher rate. And that's a problem because we're only hearing from people who are reinforcing how we want to see the world. I agree with that. But I do not believe that technology is one of the fundamental drivers of what made wokeness like the monster that it is. And the reason I say that is it really goes back to the fact that a lot of the woke infiltration happened before technology was a thing. All of this happened before technology was even a thing. So if anything, it's reinforcing it, but I don't believe it was a driver of it in the first place because they started their infiltration decades ago before the internet even existed. So you can't tell me that it was one of the driving factors of wokeness when the woke were taking over institutions before the internet even was a thing. Social scientist Jonathan Haidt, for example, traces it directly to the 20. If Haidt is tracing wokeness to 2009, is that true? Haidt has a fundamental misunderstanding of when wokeness started then. When Twitter added the retweet button and Facebook added the share button, the resulting acceleration of memoric virality revolutionized the whole dynamic of how people interact with each other on the internet and suddenly made connected into ideological coercion via distributed online mob a common occurrence. And whatever the precise influence of technological change in driving the revolution, it certainly hasn't ended. When the invention of the Gutenberg printing press launched an information revolution in the 15th century, the full consequence took well over a century to play out. A century of theological chaos, bitter division, and bloodshed, the mass media revolution of the radio that helped do the same thing in the 20th century. We should hardly expect the consequence of the internet to be any less dramatic or long lasting. In part, we've already seen how disintegrative efforts have helped ensure that there is no authority. I'm not going to say technology isn't a factor. I think we need to be really clear and I think we need to be really specific. Technology is a factor in reinforcing it, but it wasn't what created it in the first place. In fact, I think that one of the basic things that we need to do to fight off wokeness, to be really, really honest, is to go back to basics. This is something we've talked about in my locals. I mean, Sam, you and I have talked about this in locals on like one of the streams we did. We talked about pamphleteering. We talked about going back to doing like the old school political tactics that don't actually involve technology at all. Putting a piece of paper on someone's desk saying, "Have you heard about this thing?" And then following up the next week with a new piece of paper and then following up another week after that. I actually think that one of the things we need to do is to go back to basics and to stop using technology as our primary way of communication because people aren't reading on the internet. I mean, one of the fundamental truths is that if you're expecting people to read on the internet, you will always be disappointed. People do not read on a computer. We don't read on a screen. And so one of the things we need to do to fight this is to actually go back to writing things on paper and printing them out. It's not as sexy, it's not as fun, it's a little bit more work, but you have to make it more real to people. You have to make it more tangible. All right, guys, if you're enjoying this stream so far, and not just because I'm yelling at conservatives today and I'm not a taker of any shit right at the moment, please make sure you mount that like button for me. I appreciate it. Oh, actually, let me stop and do okay, just so you guys know, let me do like an official promo, just so you guys know. If you want to see a stream where I am not yelling at people, you can come to my stream tomorrow because tomorrow Brandon Strock's coming on the channel. I promise there will be no yelling tomorrow when Brandon is on the channel. There will be no stern talking tos. Brandon is much nicer to people than I am. But make sure you mark it on your calendars. I think it's going to be a great conversation. We're going to be talking about tomorrow what Brandon has been through since January 6th, and also probably more importantly, where Walkaway is going and what the future is. So that's going to be tomorrow at 5 p.m. on this channel. Same time, same place. And, probably much more fun than the in-depth reading we're doing today. All right, let's get back to it. There is no authority. Who or what institution today is now able to establish any kind of metaphysical framework, common moral narrative, common vision of a properly ordained life, common norms, or even common reality that most of society will respect, trust, and follow and defend? CNN, Ted Cruz? Yeah, no. We can move on. But how then can this ideological upheaval quickly be put to rest? Exactly. I'll tell you exactly how. This person needs to be introduced to libertarianism. How you do this is through a decentralized model. How you do this is through a decentralized model. And the libertarians right now are doing this in New Hampshire. I have learned so much so much from watching how the libertarians in New Hampshire organized for the past year, and how, like, when you have a decentralized model, everyone's doing different things and everyone has different projects, and it's a little bit chaotic and sometimes it's a little bit hard to follow. But guess what? You cut the head off one of those things and you got 10 more that are already in its place. So if one thing gets canceled or if one thing doesn't work, you got all sorts of other things. And this article, because this article fundamentally rejects individualism, doesn't understand how a decentralized model can actually work. So this person needs to get introduced to libertarianism. There doesn't need to be authority. You don't need to exert your will onto other people. You simply need to provide people with the resources and the tools to go do their own thing. This is what we're going to do in the Unwoke Army for people who know about that. I'm kind of keeping that a little bit close to the chest right now. My locals community knows about it. But the whole point of my Unwoke Army, for those of you who are in my locals, it's to create a decentralized model. So there doesn't have to be a common authority. In fact, a common authority would get in the way entirely. Yeah, the Bolshevik Revolution happened without Twitter. Many revolutions have happened without Twitter. To think that this is all a result of technology, like, I think that's fundamentally misguided. 7, political parties can't choose their policies. Political strategists have been pointing out for some time now that woke ideas like critical race theory and defunding the police are not politically popular and are hamstringing the Democratic Party's electoral chances. So theoretically, they would just drop those things, stop talking about them, change course, and talk about popular things. But of course, that's not all that simple. All they can actually do is ride the chaos of the zeitgeist because some small portion of their base, maybe some 8% of Americans, are true believers gripped by religious fervor that transcends political calculation. I disagree with this. Fundamentally disagree with this. The Democrats could choose to change their politics whenever they want to. And I'm going to give you proof of this. Joe Biden blatantly pandered to Black Lives Matter during the election. Blatantly pandered to Black Lives Matter. Since he has been president for over a year now, for 13 months, has Joe Biden delivered anything that Black Lives Matter wanted? No, he hasn't. Don't tell me that you can't change your politics and your policies and you only have to appeal to the most extreme wing when Joe Biden hasn't done anything for Black Lives Matter. Joe Biden is frankly has pissed off Black Lives Matter and progressive activists since he took office, since he doesn't do anything that they want him to do. So I don't agree with this either. The political leadership of the DNC could choose to change their focus on critical race theory in an instant. It's a choice. So, and that quite frankly goes for the Republicans too. The Republicans could elect to actually revise their party platform. The Republicans, the GOP, have not updated their party platform in 10 years. In 10 years. They could make a choice to do that. They don't. This is just a series of choices. That's all it is. So I do not agree with this one. Majorities don't matter. Unfortunately, for those dreaming of harnessing a majority anti-woke popular world, the truth is, as statistician and philosopher Nassim Taleb has explained in detail, it's typically not the majority that sets new societal rules, but the most intolerant minority. This is the problem with democracy. If the vast majority generally prefers to eat food A instead of food B, but a small minority is absolutely insistent on eating food B and is willing to start chopping the heads off of anyone who disagrees and serve food A, the majority doesn't care enough to get all the bloody dying on a particular culinary hill. All restaurants will soon be serving only food B, the new national cuisine. This is especially true if the intolerant minority already holds disproportional position of influence within the system, given that personnel is policy. I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that one either. I mean, the fact of the matter is majorities win elections. And so if you have a majority of Americans that are against critical race theory, that is going to be helpful in terms of stopping the implementation of critical race theory on some level. Now, I do think that that's not going to change the culture necessarily, because just because someone is against something doesn't mean they actually care. That's part of the problem, right? You can say, I don't like critical race theory. Well, that's not actually the most important thing. The most important thing is not you don't like critical race theory. The most important thing is how much do you care that you don't like critical race theory? Because one of the problems that we're dealing with right now is there's a whole bunch of people on the political right that say, oh, I don't like critical race theory. I don't want it taught in my schools. Okay. Do they care enough to go to a school board meeting? Do they care enough to run for school board? Do they care enough about not liking critical race theory that they are pulling their kids out of school? Do they care enough about not liking critical race theory that they're going to write a public records request to the school to find out what the school is teaching? Do they care enough about not liking critical race theory that they are going to do what is required to make sure critical race theory isn't in their kids' schools? The question that we should be asking is not, do you like something or don't you like something? It's how much do you care? And what are you willing to do? And this is part of the problem because the right doesn't like a lot of things. The right is basically controlled opposition. That's all they are. The right, conservatives and Republicans, will tell you all day, every day about all of the things about the society that they don't like, but they will never actually do anything about those things. So they can say, I don't like this, I don't like that, I don't like this other thing all they want, but if they're not willing to take action on those things, then it honestly doesn't even matter if they like them or dislike them. It does not matter because the question is, do you dislike something enough to actually take action and push back? That's the thing that we should be talking about. Yeah, unknown username. We're not talking about Durham today. We're talking about this article. I don't think Durham is going to amount to anything. So I'm asking people in the chat to focus on what we're talking about. Many of you are, some of you aren't. We're doing the article today. I'm not talking about Durham. Okay, sorry, I was just looking at the chat where people are still not focused on what's in front of them. Guys, okay, if you want to win, you're going to focus on what's in front of you. If you don't want to win, then you're going to continue talking about nonsense that doesn't really matter in the context of the discussion that we're having. This is why I'm frustrated. All I want is a group of people that are concerned about actually winning. All I want is a group of people that are actually that hate what's going on in our country enough to actually do something about it. That's all I want. That's all I'm asking for. That's all I'm asking for. I don't think I'm asking too much. All right. And thank you to the people who are staying on topic. I appreciate you, and I don't give you enough credit, and I don't give you enough love. So thank you for people who are staying on topic. All right. Personnel is policy. Let's imagine, for example, that some lawmakers officially ban the teaching of critical race theory in their state schools and universities. Will this be the end of the matter? No, it won't. Will all the woke teachers and administrators who consider consciousness raising through critical pedagogy, or in general what Marxists call praxis, we shouldn't be using that word praxis. No one understands what praxis means. Normal people don't understand what praxis means. I don't understand why we're using that word, but okay. The constant need for the transformation of theory into practice. To be practically a religious commandment, just stop doing so. No, of course not. As one consultant slash cleric recently advised teachers, don't say critical race theory, just teach its precepts. You're going to see how classroom teachers apply some of those pedagogical models in ways where they don't even mention the words critical race theory, but they're still doing anti-racist work. Yes, the work of spreading the good news shall not be stopped. After all, who's going to stop them? Will they be fired by the woke human resources department or the woke principal, abandoned by the woke teachers union, reported by their state by their unwoke peers, all of whom have already been systematically purged from the collective for their heresy? If concerned parents do manage to get them fired, who will hire their replacements? Why? The woke HR department. This is exactly what I was saying earlier about like once you fire the bad people, how do you get them replaced with the right people? The people who actually set the effective policy of any of the institution are inevitably the personnel located in the power centers closest to the implementation. Or, as a Chinese saying goes, for every measure that comes down from on high, a countermeasure arises from below. That principle works equally well for a revolutionary professional managerial class as it does for beleaguered counter revolutionary peasants. And in this case, the reality is that all the institutional high ground is still occupied. Well, I mean, but this is just more evidence that, like, this is not just about people getting pulled out of power that at the very height of the institution. It's not just about winning elections or replacing woke CEOs. People up and down the rung need to be replaced, and you only do that by changing culture. You only do it by changing culture, not by forcing culture, by changing culture. All the institutional high ground is still occupied. Have the top universities already been retaken from the woke or replaced? No. One still imaginary university in Austin doesn't count. Oh my God. This is the dumbest thing that's ever happened in the history of ever. Is this University of Austin thing even still real? They aren't even doing anything. Oh my God. Is this University of Austin thing still happening, or was this just a blatant PR stunt by Barry Weiss? I'm going to say it was a blatant PR stunt by all the same people who are involved in FAIR. This is why you cannot trust intellectuals to do anything. When was this shit announced? This was like last year sometimes. They announced that they're going to build this great university. I heard at one point they had like $250 million allocated to building an Unwoke university in Austin, Texas or some such shit. So much wasted money. So much wasted money by intellectuals who are intellectualizing about the problem and don't know how to do shit in the real world. Building a new university is not going to fix this problem. That's a rant I don't need to do today. What about elite finishing schools, the accreditation companies, most mainstream news media, the social media companies, the publishing houses, Hollywood, the major foundations, the nonprofits, the think tanks, the consulting and accounting companies, the investment banks, the NASDAQ, the digital service providers, the HR department, the Fortune 500 companies? Most of their boards, the law schools, the Bar Association, the permanent federal bureaucratic state, hell, even Halliburton. I'm going to say, too, I'm going to add the American Psychological Association and the American Psychiatric Association because both those organizations have gone completely woke as well, and they dictate the entire mental health practice in this country. No. Lisa, why don't you come up with your own fucking ideas? Why don't you suggest something? Right now, we are focusing on reading an article that is giving us a lay of the land. That's what we're focusing on. If you want to talk about ideas, come up with your own fucking idea. Have I expressly articulated that I've had enough? Or are you going to keep going? Sin says a lot of fiction writers have stepped over the publishing gateways by self-publishing. So my book, Actively Unwoke, the reason I went with the publisher I did was because they're specifically a conservative publishing house that are doing this in a new way. And I wanted to support that. So we're just going to keep blocking Lisa until she gets the message. Like, I don't actually want to permanently block Lisa. I really don't, because Lisa's been on this channel before, but like, she's going to get a permanent block. And I don't like actually permanently blocking people, but like, I'm just so sick of this shit. I'm so sick of it. It's like, focus on the thing. Okay, so they've taken over all major institutions. Long marches are long. When Herbert Marcuse and the rest of the neo-Marxists and the critical theorists from the Frankfurt School finally took to heart Antonio Gramsci's directive to seize cultural hegemony, see, if Lisa had just like waited a second, we could have gotten to the culture piece. That's all I'm saying. And first conceived of launching the long march through the institutions, it was only the start of the 1970s. It was not until almost 50 years later that their dream was realized. However, much these several years may have seemed like an avalanche of shockingly rapid ideological coups d'etats to those who saw power abruptly change hands in their institutions. One after another, this suddenness was an illusion. Coups only succeeded if the backers necessary to support them are already in place. And it took literally a generation of young individuals and activists simultaneously inspired and disillusioned by the left radicalism of the 60s, entering into and seeding the institutions, rising into positions of power, and cultivating another generation of trained foot soldiers for their influence to fully flower. Now, much as Marcuse was lamenting in 1971, that the fact that the radical left has no equal access to the great chains of information and indoctrination and largely responsible for its isolation, the right and its moderate liberal fellow travelers today find themselves isolated and impotent in return. And yet, in response, they appear to have no patience whatsoever for executing their own countermarch through the institutions. Instead, mostly trying to either force the institutions to behave differently through political power, mostly pointless, or fleeing from the institutions entirely in a bid to create new ones from the ground up. A long shot, if even more promising. Either way, they seem to hope everything achieved by the left can be reversed in only a matter of a few years, which is naive on multiple levels because culture wars are generational wars, and the young are woke as hell. Now we're getting to the crux of the problem, aren't we? I don't buy into this idea. Hang on one sec. I don't buy into this idea that we're going to be able to build a parallel society. I don't buy into it at all. I think it's really, really naive. Again, it's like one of those naive things. It's like, "Oh, you don't like our social media policies? Well, go build your own." Well, what happened when they tried to build their own is like they push back on them in every way, right? Yeah, so, I think that again, this goes back to people need to start changing culture. And in order to change culture, people need to know they need to have a vision of what they're fighting for. My vision lies in rugged individuality, color indifference, not color blindness, color indifference, and focusing in on again, the like we have to focus in on the individual over the collective, meritocracy, looking at how individual effort contributes. That's my vision. I also think we have to work on the empowerment in society, making people see that they don't need validation from others in order to productively contribute. And this is part of the problem of the woke, right? They're always looking for validation from others because they don't have validation inside themselves. That's what should be taught in schools. Social emotional learning is dangerous for a number of reasons, but one of the reasons that social emotional learning is absolutely dangerous is because it teaches people that what other people say and what other people think and what other people do, that's how you get your self-worth. It's just the other people. The other people need more empathy. You're fine just the way you are. It's other people who need more empathy. Well, I'm not opposed to people having empathy. But what I am opposed to is telling people that their self-worth, their value is not is teaching children that their self-worth and value is dictated by other people. Hmm. Just looking in the chat, emphasize people putting hits out on peacocks in California. What? Okay, emphasize. Again, not on topic, but thank you for the super chat. You guys pay me to be off topic, then that's fine. Not if you're just distracting the entire chat with being off topic. All right. In his book Bowling Alone, a legendary political scientist, Robert Putnam, explained that the sweeping societal change typically only occurs generation to generation, and through what he called cohort change. For most people, the formative experiences of coming to age are truly formative. Afterwards, their fundamental values are typically barely change for the rest of their lives. For this reason, as Tanner Green adeptly elaborates, it is necessarily the case that the culture wars are long wars because the cultural insurgents win few converts in their own cohort. Instead, the real target of their ideas are not their contemporaries, but their contemporaries' children and grandchildren. The process of instilling new ideas and overthrowing existing orthodoxies takes time, usually 2 to 3 generations at a time. So, for the generational cohort at the height of its power, any change will only seem to be happening very gradually. But eventually, a transition point is reached and the end falls swift. The older cohort suddenly finds themselves outnumbered and outgunned, swept up in a flood that they have assumed was a mere trickle. They are shocked and confused, but only because the revolution occurring below did not echo in their souls like it did for the youth, whose views they neglected or ignored. Only once it is far too late do they realize their mistake. So basically what he's saying here is like, this is a long-term problem to fix, and this is why the schools are so critical in this problem, right? Because the schools are causing this problem in the first place. The reason that young people are woke as hell, to quote the article, is because of the schools. It's all because of the schools. And so if you do really want a quick solution to this, it's not school choice. Don't believe anyone who tells you it's school choice. It's defunding the schools. Defunding the schools is the only way to accelerate winning the culture war. Defunding the schools now. Defunding the schools immediately. Forcing, which would be a rocky transition, let's just be honest, it would be a rocky transition for a minute. But what defunding the schools would do is it would force other solutions to bubble up. It would force it. School choice is not enough. School choice is the bare minimum that needs to happen. The bare minimum. And we're talking about universal school choice, man. Any parent and any child can send their schools to any or their kids to any schools they want. That is the bare minimum that needs to happen. And even if that happens, it is still 2 generations at a minimum to fix this problem. Because even if you do universal school choice, you still need to train an entire new generation of teachers and an entire new generation of teacher trainers. So you can make school choice universal across the country today, and it's still going to take 2 generations to fix the problem. That's how bad it is. So the only way to actually fix it is to defund the public schools. That is one of the biggest steps that we could take forward. Emphasize woke logic, don't blame me for being me. As long as you're doing it through super chat, emphasize, you can do whatever you want. Yeah, people think that charter schools are safe. No, they're not. People think that private schools are safe. No, they're not. Parents have less control in private schools than they do in public schools. Private schools, they can kick you out if you don't agree to whatever they want you to agree to. Charter schools aren't necessarily unwoke. Charter schools can be more woke. So, universal defunding of the schools. No, it would not defund the schools. School choice does not defund the schools. School choice only defunds the very worst schools. It doesn't defund all of the schools. It still allows woke teachers to teach wherever they want. So no, school choice does not defund the schools. Let's see. Hence, even if the anti-woke were prepared to launch their own long march through the institutions, the cohort from which they currently need to recruit their talent is the same one that's been busy tearing things down, chanting, "The revolution will not uphold the Constitution." Of Gen Z Americans, those born after 1996, 51% report that America is inextricably linked to white supremacy. 52. Listen, okay, I'm not going to read all the things that crazy young people believe because they're young. They believe some crazy shit, and this is all because of the schools. The youth are still coddled and mentally broken. Back in 2015, when most people still thought of what is now referred to as wokeness only as a bizarre and vaguely amusing phenomenon that was isolated to college campuses, Jonathan Haidt and Greg Lukianoff published an essay, The Coddling of the American Mind. They advanced an essentially psychological explanation for why so many college students were suddenly acting simultaneously like fragile snowflakes and rabid authoritarians. Thanks to the embrace of self-esteem movement and helicopter parents well, I actually think the self-esteem movement actually does need to come back. Again, I think that the woke I think that Height has gotten a little bit woke lately, if we're honest about it. But again, I'm going to argue that individual empowerment and building resilience is actually an answer to this. So, people who are demonizing psychology or, frankly, personal development, that is exactly the wrong thing to do. I'm sorry, I'm going to start skipping around because we have half an hour left before locals community Zoom. And so, I actually want I want to be able to take like a short break before locals community Zoom. So, we're going to have to speed up a little bit. But I think that personal empowerment, and, like, helping people to know that they have everything they need inside of themselves, I think that's actually a key part of solving this problem, and I think that's really often overlooked in this discussion. Just texting my husband, I can hear him going to the gas station, he needs to get me a snack. Because I know we have no food in the house and I'm getting hungry. Alright. I must admit that I've grown a bit skeptical of this explanation by now. As things have progressed, it's become increasingly clear to me that these claims to offense are often used as cunningly deliberate weapons against empathetic liberals. Yeah, so they're basically saying that that this generation is coddled, and and it's not just that they feel like victims; it's that they're using victimization in order to garner sympathy. And I agree with all of that. But the answer to that is personal empowerment. Elite overproduction is still in overdrive. In what is rapidly becoming one of the preferred explanations for the revolution, the evolutionary anthropologist, mathematician, prophet of doom, Turchin, has identified elite overproduction as having been at the top driver of revolution and civil conflict throughout history. He points to the tendency for decadent societies to produce far more overeducated elites than there are elite level jobs, leading to a large number of underemployed and resentful elite class intellectuals of this type who tend to pine after the position they deserve and eventually start spending their free time starting revolutionary cells, or as James Lindsay has put it, all the children of the upper middle class bourgeoisie fake elites who find they will likely never be part of the truly wealthy elite like Bezos that they aspire to be have quickly become a breeding ground for a reticent society instead. Well, the answer to that, again, is personal empowerment, it's entrepreneurship. Like, if your dream job is like senior executive vice president of like a hedge fund, like, I mean, or maybe not even a hedge fund. A hedge fund is a horrible example. Like, if your dream job is senior executive vice president of any like corporate company, well, guess what? You can probably make more money by becoming your own boss, by building your own business, right? So I don't necessarily think that elite overproduction is bad. I don't think it's a bad thing to have an educated population, although we can talk about where they're being educated, which the colleges are part of this problem too. But I'm not as worried about that. The problem is that, again, like, maybe libertarianism really is the answer for everything. Because it seems to me that the problem with elite overproduction is not that there are too many smart people, it's that we aren't steering those smart people in the correct direction. Does that make sense? Like, if we're steering those smart people to say, your dream job is senior executive vice president of this major multinational corporation, and you're going to make a boat ton of money by being a senior executive vice president of this multinational corporation, that might be short sighted because there's only so many senior executive multinational corporation VPs in the world. But if you instead say, your dream job is to start your own company and build your own business and to employ others who don't want to be entrepreneurs, but you can make a boat ton of money by being your own boss and starting your own business. That's much more about personal empowerment, and it's about relying on yourself, again, rather than looking for other people to provide for you. Well, this is why not the naughty one. This is why personal empowerment is so important because if someone doesn't want to work for something, it's not usually because they're lazy. It's not usually because that at all. It's because they don't believe that they can achieve that thing. A lot of people want to start businesses, but they don't do it. They drag their feet. They make every excuse in the book for why they can't start their own business. It's not that they are incapable of it. It's that they don't believe. They in their heads do not believe that they will be successful. So it's not that they won't put in the effort. If they believe in themselves, they will put in the effort. If they do not believe in themselves, they will not put in the effort. Guys, in about 20 minutes, I'm going to be ending this live stream, whether we're done this article or not. I just want to remind everyone that I have a locals community Zoom. Not there. Not there. Oh no. There. That is starting at 7 p.m. tonight. If you want to get in on that community Zoom, you want to make sure you're a supporter in my locals community. I will be sending out the information to locals right when the Zoom begins. So you have the Zoom meeting room. To become a member of my locals, you go to kb.locals.com/support. The information is in the description below. You sign up for $5 a month or $50 a year if you're feeling saucy. And you can join us all for a chat at 7 p.m. and it usually goes pretty long, so I'm sure we will have multi-hour chat tonight. But use the remaining 20 minutes to sign up now, and you can join us in a little bit. All right. I don't think we're going to get through the rest of this article, but we'll do the best we can. Wokeness is still required by law. Why are America's university presidents and CEOs so terrified of their Gen Z students and employees, capitulating immediately to their every demand? Is it because Twitter has become basically their entire world? The scope of U.S. anti discrimination statutes. Oh, God, this is going to go into a tryst on anti discrimination. Hang on. Practically speaking, this means any claim by conservative politicians that they will put an end to wokeness if elected to office is pure theater. Without addressing the structure of the law, none of these forces at play in the workplace will reverse on their own. In fact, they will get much worse. Have I mentioned how very woke law school students are? But unless the politicians are willing to take on the politically suicidal task of reforming the Civil Rights Act, practically wholly writ in American society due to having tackled a genuinely great moral wrong, nothing will do any significant impact on the concrete incentives at play, so it's a safe bet that they will just posture rhetorically and pass another tax cut instead. I agree with that. I know we didn't read that whole section, but generally speaking, I agree with that. And again, this goes back to the idea that if you are expecting people to solve your problems for you, if you are expecting your politicians to solve this problem, it is fundamentally misguided. This is only going to be solved when people within their communities are standing up and saying no more. This is a local grassroots thing. Money is still power. Those who live outside places like DC or San Francisco might hear the word philanthropy and think it means feeding the hungry or something naive and lowbrow like that. But philanthropy is really a word for how the concentrated power latent in oligarchic money is transformed into applied political and cultural power. This means that foundations have truly tremendous influence over public policy because every nominally independent think tank, for example, automatically tailors its projects to attract the blessing of their funding. Government officials, being lazy and chummy with nonprofit experts and executives, who are often former or future colleagues, simply copy their ideas directly into the rules they implement. I don't necessarily disagree with this, but I also think it's kind of missing the mark on where we should be focusing, or where people like us are actually able to have impact. The opposition is still only political. Given all of the above, it should be clear by now that political opposition to the revolution is rather unlikely to be sufficient, not without resistance on the cultural, educational, economic, technological, and media fronts as well, at a minimum. Yet what else has emerged so far? As outlined in detail above, the woke left is unloading huge amounts of cash to advance in social causes that matter to them. On what social causes has the right matched this level of funding or even enthusiasm? That's a fair point. Does the right even have social causes? Only ones related to abortion. If people standing up to the woke are being fired by their ideals and losing their employer provided health insurance, for example, does the right have a concrete plan to make sure they have an alternative? No, they don't. How many people other than Orrin Cass have started seriously considering a new conservative wave of unionization by now? I'm not going to go into unionization. Come on. And if this is a culture war, is there a conservative foundation for the arts? No, it doesn't seem like it. Conservatives hate art. And this is part of the problem as well, because art is one of the key influences of culture. Art is one of the key influences of culture. So if conservatives and the right aren't making art, they're frankly not even not making art, but poo-pooing art and thinking it's frivolous and stupid, then they are missing a golden opportunity to influence culture. Partisanship is still getting worse, and Wokelash 2.0 is entirely possible. Donald Trump may not have been the cause of the revolution, but his presidency certainly helped send it into overdrive. Worked into frothing at the mouth levels of outrage, the ranks of the resistance was easily converted to wokeness on the purely tribal need to be for whatever Trump was against. Traditional liberal principles be damned. Americans' partisan political rancor has hardly improved in the years since Trump left the White House. If anything, it is somehow even worse. This is part of why I think that our one of our top priorities has got to be to wake more people on the left up, because a lot of them are caught up in this bullshit and so obsessed with Trump that they've lost the forest through the trees. And it's like, if we like one of the main things I think we can do is to wake more people on the left up, because people on the left know how to fight back and know how to engage in activism. None of the levers of power have changed or will change hands. At the risk of sounding like one of the conspiracy theorists, who really controls the power centers in the United States? The intelligence agencies, the domestic security services, the military officer corps, the diplomatic services, the regulatory administrative state, and so on and so forth. This is why libertarianism is our only way out of this. This article, I don't think that this was the intent of the author of this article, but this article is basically making the case for libertarianism. It really is. It may be the case that this class prefers to believe they have certain rights to rule as they do, a certain nobility of superior virtue, merit, knowledge that justifies the permanent hold on power and the material gains that happen to come from it. Blah, blah, blah. Hang on. We're going to skip the rest of that part. The wrong people hold too much power. We're almost done. Leviathan has awoken. In the end, it may be that the revolution isn't quite the right word for wokeness after all. Real revolutions characteristically replace one elite with another, redistributing their wealth and power. True, this is happening at an individual level, with many a white male manager finding himself suddenly replaced by someone younger and more diverse. But at a broader level, this is a revolution that has embraced wholeheartedly by the leadership of the elite, who show little fear that they will ever be replaced as a class. Indeed, they seem to have adopted woke ideology as a wonderfully useful tool for reinforcing their position while punishing their inter and intra class rivals. In this way, the woke revolution strikes me as similar to the Chinese Cultural Revolution. Ding, 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 ding. It's exactly the same. And not just because, Julius, why don't you agree with the defunding of the schools? Give us a reason. Make your case. I'd like to see the answer to it in the chat. What do you think is a better option? Rather, because at root, the Cultural Revolution was started by Mao as a way to leverage the blind ideological zealotry of the young to wage an intra-elite war on his political rivals within the Chinese Communist Party. But it seems to me that the woke revolution, as co-opted by the elite, is being tailored to point not towards the dissolution and lawless chaos forever, but towards a reordering that brings with it a great centralization and unification of power. Aha! This I agree with. I think this guy's gotten some things really right, and I think he's gotten some things really wrong. This part he has absolutely gotten correct. Edward, I think this is a good suggestion. The problem is that average people do not know that the public schools are government schools. So if you say government schools to an average person, they don't know what you're talking about. We have to use language that everyone understands, and you have to introduce concepts to people. So no, I do not agree that you never use the term public schools. What we have to do is to teach people that public schools are government schools, that the government controls all the public schools, that every public school teacher is a public school employee. Julius says because fundamentally schools are political, not institutional, keep funding. That's exactly the point, Julius. Why are we funding political institutions? That's you made my point for me. This is why the schools need to be defunded because they are political institutions. But it seems to me that the woke revolution as co-opted by elites is being tailored not towards dissolution and lawless chaos, but towards a reordering that brings with it a great centralization and unification of power. In this revolution, the liberation and safety of the individual by the state becomes the greatest good. Each individual comes under the tender, empathetic care of the state alone, which ensures their liberty and safety. And state contains only autonomous individuals. No, this is not true. Again, he's almost there. He's almost there. But again, going back to the point we made earlier, he is fundamentally mistaken that he thinks the woke want autonomous individuals. The woke does not want autonomous individuals. The woke wants people to see themselves as part of a collective. So this sentence is fundamentally incorrect. In 2019, America's most celebrated high priest of wokeness, Ibram X. Kendi, was invited by Politico to offer his take on how to fix American politics. He proposed an anti-racist constitutional amendment and a Department of Anti-Racism. I don't care about this one. Am I able to delete my own email address yet? No. I can't. This is a stupid way to go about things. I'm not able to even update or delete my own email address. Okay. Some of these many explanations for what countries continues to drive wokeness may seem contradictory and perhaps some are, but they also aren't necessarily exclusive. And in fact, they are certainly likely to be many more factors than this list contains. Like a hydra, today's revolution is a complex beast with many heads. Its causes and its consequences are maybe multitudinous. Well, that's exactly why we need a decentralized solution. I am now more convinced than ever that my vision for actively unwoke is exactly the solution to this because it is the only decentralized solution that I think is taking place in the space. So if the drivers of wokeness are too many, that can only be it's like he's even using the term hydra. Also, like a hydra is likely to prove very difficult to kill. Well, if you want to kill a hydra, you have to create a hydra of your own. And that's what I'm trying to do. And that's it. So overall, oh, look at that, 10 minutes left. I know we didn't read all of it, and I know I yelled at you guys a little bit. But I yell at you because you need to be yelled at sometimes. Not everyone in the chat, but some of you do. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. Ultimately, I think this article gets some things right. I think it also gets some stuff wrong. I also think that one of the problems with this article is it's way too long and detail oriented, and he could have gotten to his points quicker. There's a lot of extraneous stuff that was in it that didn't need to be there. And the reason I bring that up is I think that one of the things we really need to focus on in this fight is communication. We need to make sure that we are packaging our content and our ideas in a way that people are going to be receptive to it. You know who's going to read this? Intellectuals. People who are actually doing real world shit are not going to make their way through this entire article. Because there's just like so much fluff, there's so much extraneous stuff. It's a very intellectualized article. Okay, Julius. Education is an institution that is critical to widespread societal change. Education is controlled entirely by the woke. Almost every single teacher teaching in public government schools today is woke. We're talking over 90%. Over 9 out of 10 teachers teaching in public schools today are woke. And not only that, but 9 out of 10 teacher trainers, the people teaching in the schools of education, are also woke. So you are correct that education is an institution for widespread cultural change. The problem is that institution and the people running it from top to bottom at every single level are all adhering to one specific ideology. And they are forcing that ideology onto the youngest among us when they are not able to defend themselves. So, your solution will take decades and decades and decades and decades and decades of constant, focused effort in order to fix the problem. To the point where I don't know how old you are, Julius, but if you are any older than 20, it will not be done in your lifetime. It won't be done in your lifetime. You will not live to see a day in which the public schools are not completely controlled by the woke unless they are completely defunded. That is the only solution that makes sense. Again, we're talking about 2 generations, and that's with school choice, with universal school choice. And it's still not going to work for 2 generations. And that's with school choice and with an army of people trying to fix the problem. Like, we cannot keep coddling this idea. The schools are irrevocably broken. They're irrevocably broken. They are not going to work. I don't know why we're still continuing to spend tens of thousands of dollars per student in an institution that is impossible to fix, that will never be fixed in any of our lifetimes. That's the thing that needs to change. Julia says, what are the chances of defunding them? I don't know. In New Hampshire, I'm working on it. But you know what? Here's the thing. I don't even care. Say we have a 1 in a million chance of defunding the public schools. 1 in a million. 1 in 10 million. Should that stop us from trying? Because if we're going to go with any other answer that's not defunding the schools, we're just playing around. We are not having a serious conversation about what is required to fix this problem. If the solution is anything other than absolute defunding of the government schools, we are not having a serious conversation. So I don't care if it's a 1 in a billion chance of actually winning. Don't care. It's the solution to the problem. And if we don't talk about the solution to the actual problem, the only solution that can even get us started on the right path, then we're just LARPing. We're just playing pretend. Anything other than defunding the schools is not going to work. All right, guys, that's the stream today. That didn't go quite how I wanted it to, but that's all right. Sometimes that's happened. And I have to say that, yeah, Reagan says the article was heavy for me. It is a heavy article. I think that it makes a lot of good points, and I'm glad we read it. And I'm glad we read it together. Just as a reminder, tomorrow I'm going to be talking to Brandon Strzok, Walkaway founder and current House arrestee after his January 6th trial. But, and by I mean trial, I mean personal trial and tribulation. What the government put him through is ridiculous. But he's going to be on the channel tomorrow at 5 p.m. So mark your calendars. I think it's going to be a wonderful chat. I'm really looking forward to it. And I think it's going to be great. I stream every day on my main channel, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 5 p.m. So you can always catch me talking about something, whether it be the news or reading an article or having a chat with someone. That's what we do. On Fridays, we go over to my second channel, Actively Unwoke, and we watch a woke training for happy hour at 5 p.m. and we talk about it in the chat. And if you'd like to support the work I'm doing, there's a couple things you can do. Number one, you can pre-order my book Actively Unwoke, the only book that exists on the market that has practical ideas and actionable case studies about how to fight back and how to change culture. That is available for pre-order right now. If you go over to activelyunwoke.com, you can get it on Amazon. You can get it all other places as well. We have a webinar coming up on Thursday with Paul Rossi. This is totally free. You can sign up for that. And of course, you can join me for my local Zoom call in 5 minutes. 5 minutes. But you have to become a supporter in Locals, which you can do by heading over to kb.locals.com/support, signing up for $5 a month. You can sign up for $50 a year. You can also make a one-time gift, and we'll get started with our local Zoom calls shortly, and hopefully I will regain my voice for that. Julius, thank you for addressing things respectfully. I don't mind having respectful conversations about disagreements. I do mind when people in the chat are trying to distract with nonsense. You weren't doing that, Julius. You were offering appropriate insight and questions, and these are the types of conversations that we need to have. All right, guys, I'm gonna head off and go take a bathroom break, and in 4 minutes we'll be meeting and convening in my locals. I will see you guys all